Thank you so much for the introduction. So I'm going to talk about data minimizations from users' perception and in context of web search engine. What we did is we started and established some key problems when thinking about actionable solutions and how to complement existing system-based approach. Well, looking into data minimization from legal standpoint, which entails that personal data shall be adequate, relevant, and limited to what it is necessary in relation to the purpose for which they are processed. And now this is also the direct consequences of the legal principle of purpose limitation as well, which requires that personal data only be processed for specified, explicit, and legitimate purposes. So statement of only improving user experience are generally not specific enough to meet the legal threshold of data minimization. So there are several approaches that data minimization has been currently explored or handled. One of the talk from yesterday, for example, was on designing a private logging pipeline by Google. In the talk, data minimization was framed as first identifying the data, followed by defining its purpose within the context of logging. An example provided when enforcing policies on devices, unnecessary data is prevented from leaving the user's client device, and on the server side, various stakeholders only access the data they need. Now, defining need is crucial, which directly ties to the two principles, which is necessity and relevancy. And one of the limitations of conventional system-based approach is that it attributes the sole responsibility to the service providers. Now, some computational approach also exists from literatures where my collaborators reason about data minimizations by linking the purpose to the performance metrics in the service. And they established a framework for inhibiting data over collection. However, such automated approach might not always capture the context-dependent perception of necessity of the data from system users' point of view. And therefore, we are doing this user-centered approach. So what we did is conducted a semi-structured interview with some sketch exercise with 30 European Union and UK-based users to examine their perception, decision-making factors, and conceptual design recommendation for implementing measures of data minimization. We also acknowledge that the fact that data minimization is context-dependent in nature, so we grounded this project in the domain of web search engine, a prototypical example of data-driven system. Now, let's dive into the users, what users had to say in this context. First, I'll just go over some of the theme where there are many. And the first one is their perception of Google versus other search engine, where participants tend to perceive that Google lacking data minimizations while believing other search engine had some measures in place. And this varying perception shaped by their experience of receiving less accurate results on the other search engine, which confirms, the narratives that they have the idea of that AI or machine learning model need more data to give good results. And on to the next point, given the option of data minimizations, participants are more willing to share data to improve service for users with similar interest than to share data for their own good, which is receiving good search results. And this seems to resonate the idea of psychology of personal data donation, where they put themselves and manifest themselves in an act of donation to show pro-social behavior. And then I will quickly go over some of the factors that influence their data minimization decision contextually, because we had some scenario-based questions for them to answer. First off, the required volume of data, which is recurrent factors considered among the participants, mainly highlighting search queries data that attributed to the temporal proximity and quantity of the data, which is how recent and past data is needed in obtaining good search result. And their perception on this tend to vary based on different type of search query data. And another key theme was balance between data collection for service improvement. So participant considered that the trade-off between the extent of improvement that will happen versus how much data or search query data they would need to share if they had the chance to selectively provide data in a data minimization setting. Now, there are some conceptual design from users on data minimization for search engine. Mainly 5 design themes came up, which were closely related to previously considered decision-making factors. One is sensitivity-based search, selection and customization based on data type and volume, visualization of data necessity and relevancy for purpose, an option to separate if searching for themselves or others, and the other is proper consent mechanism. So I'll go over the first 4 because the 5th one is well studied in the literatures. And firstly, the sensitivity-based search engine. Here is what the concept looked like, that the data minimization system within the search engine detecting sensitive keywords such as some of the keyword of involving their children's sexual health, secretive disease, and etc. And prompting users to switch to a private mode, or providing an option to allow or disallow sensitive query collection before or during the search. So again, further, to avoid this repetition of this system detecting sensitive keyword too often, they also expected this system to remember their earlier choices for sensitive keywords. And the next conceptual design was fine-grained selection and customizations on data type and volume. And to illustrate this concept, one of the example sketch was a depiction of graph with different categories of data and 0 to 4 scale for selecting the volume of data type. So more specifically, here different nodes are distinct data type, and the idea is to slide the scale based on their understanding of how much data search engine requires and which data type they are willing to share, for how long, and in what quantity. Next is using visualization to give users a straightforward breakdown of how much data is used based on the necessity and relevancy. And along with this line, there is the idea of a sandbox environment for user to test the impact of amount of data versus the extent of search result improvement with some confidence score, accuracy, and related metrics. And this group of participants favored visual explanation over text explanation, finding them more time efficient. And lastly, the option to separate if searching for themselves or searching for others. This design is to a system that differentiates the search of the device owner and the others to maintain the personalized and accurate results while ensuring privacy, especially emphasizing on the searches related to their children's or some sensitive topic that I mentioned earlier. And now, these are all the conceptual design provided by the users. Now, one of the questions could be, how do we validate if these designs are feasible and practical? So moving forward, there is a need for collaborative design effort with these users as well as the experts to ensure that designs are well informed and rooted in the technical nuances of data minimizations. And another way to think about data minimization could be as a risk management framework, balancing the value of data-driven services and individuals and in enterprise. So you can think about this one. So this is a very generalized version of risk framework, which can vary in different contexts. Generally, it has maybe these stages, starting with risk identification, where there is data inventory, application risk profile, and then the risk assessment phase, including the sensitivity score of data, organization impact score, and pre-existing control strength to mitigate the real or hypothetical risk. And then review decision, including automated assessment of residual risk, as well as some expert input. Now, we have this existing system, and we have this new type of data from users. So the question is, how do we incorporate this new data to the existing system if we are to think data minimization as a risk assessment framework? And some other question could be how to engage people in scale for this process when using data-driven services. And how do we also keep up with the evolved preference of users over time? So one possible way to think about it, it could be way out of what we are discussing right now, but we can reimagine how we would like users to interact with the technologies. And we can think of configuration of power to end users through technology, mainly to politicize the technology. And possible protocol that available to do that is in some of the design component from coordination and political science, which is available in some of the protocol in decentralized governance, which could be worth exploring in centralized context as well. And to elaborate, it could be building an infrastructure to support end users to engage in a process to redress via deliberative decision making about data minimizations. And the idea is to democratically fine-tune the data-driven model, including both stakeholder and end users, with some power distribution. And the process could be evaluated on several criteria, especially from end users' point of view, such as whether this process leads to less contentious outputs, if it fosters any consensus across divides, and whether this process leads to participants' view converge. So lastly, who decide about platform's actions are crucial. And that would be the wrap for my presentation. Thank you for listening.